Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 7 of Interview with an NHL Hero here at Heroes of the Crease Goaltending Museum and Memorabilia Limited. My name is Bruce Chiney, your host for tonight, as well as the owner and president at Heroes of the Crease. This is a live and interactive event where you, the viewers, can ask your questions in the comments section of both Facebook and YouTube, and who knows, your question may just make it to air. Now, our special guest tonight was drafted 29th overall by the Chicago Blackhawks in 2002. He had a 12-season-long professional hockey career across Europe, the ECHL, AHL, and also 17 games in the NHL. Some of his career highlights include winning the 2002 OHL Championship, becoming a part of Team Canada in the 2006-2007 Spengler Cup and Deutschland Cup tournaments, and also leading Alba Volan Szekesfehervar to the 2012 EBEL Championship title. Please welcome our very special guest for tonight, Mr. Adam Munro.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us for the show. It's very exciting. It's been a year since our last episode, so we're happy to be back in it and to have such an exciting guest such as yourself.
Again, I appreciate you having me here. I'm excited to get it going for sure.
For sure. All right. So we're going to start our questions way back a long time ago. We're going to go back to the journey in the OHL. Mm-hmm. So in only your second full season in the OHL, while you were at the Erie Otters, you recorded an unreal 26-6-6 record. No doubt it was a part of the reason as to why you were drafted 29th overall by Chicago. That made you one of a relatively few goalies to ever be taken in that round. To this day, there have only ever been 68 goalies to be selected in the first round of the draft. For you, how did it feel to be taken in the first round, and do you think that created more drive in you to succeed, or put more pressure on you to live up to that hype?
Oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, it was very exciting initially. I mean, at the draft itself, it was so neat to be there. I was down in Florida. The whole family came along and everything, and you got to sit there and go through the whole first round sort of thing. And we were kind of waiting for the second or third round. It seemed a little bit more logical at that point, especially being a goalie. And it was back in the days of the old plaques where they would put the plaque or the big plaque on the board rather than the digital. So we're sitting in a spot where I can see the people working behind the screen. I see somebody grab my name, and I think I told my dad at that point, I said, I bet you $1 million I go next. And he kind of chuckles. And then, it comes up and the whole process starts at that point. You go up, you get to meet Gary Bettman, you get to go meet the team, you get to do your interviews, which I think mine was absolutely terrible. I think right off the stage, I was still, kind of frozen in time, it seemed like, so I didn't even know what to say. But afterwards, you get to go to the camps, the initial rookie camps, the main camps, everything that follows that. But it was a lot of pressure. It is a lot of pressure on any goalie to be drafted at any higher spot in the draft. But I don't know if I felt the pressure that much. It was kind of nice, I think, that they had two first-round drafts pick that year. So Tuomo Ruutu went first and I think 8th overall or something around there. And so kind of a little bit of the pressure was taken away where at least it wasn't their only draft pick at that point. So I didn't feel as much pressure with that aspect. But, you still work just as hard as you would regardless of where you got drafted. And the pressure, I think, maybe came once you start getting into your initial games and you kind of feel like, I need to live up to the hype almost of what they draft me for. But to get up to that spot wasn't too bad. Just continuing the junior career, which they were very relaxed with, wanted me to go back and train back in Erie at the time. And just kind of take my time with it, which was nice. And I think they felt it was pretty raw, which I would definitely agree with now being a goalie coach and seeing some of my video of how raw I was. There was a lot of diving around, and but they saw something there that they took a chance on. So it's just to go back and kind of harness that.
Oh, fair enough. Plus, I mean, naturally your style evolves as you sort of settle into your career. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is always an example I quote to people where his first couple of years, like, it was all flexibility and reflexes. And I thought he'd be out of this NHL within a few seasons because of injuries, but he adapted his style. And I mean, we're in 2022 and is still at it today. So, yeah.
He's an amazing guy too. I was fortunate to go to some goalie schools in the summer with him, and to kind of see his skill level up close and personal. Like I was kind of fortunate as well to see Corey Crawford and play with him even,
Right.
and go to camps with him as well in the summer. But to see those guys and the elite level goaltenders regularly and in the summertime, kind of at the peak performance. There's no injuries right now. You're kind of, the peak level of your fitness at that time. Now I think it's more throughout the season as well. But back then it used to be almost peaks and valleys where you get rid of the season, maybe drop off a bit as it goes on because you're playing so much. But those guys were absolutely unbelievable to watch up close and personal in goalie drills right in front. And I was kind of sitting there. It was kind of imposter syndrome at that point where I was like, should I even be at this camp or should I be the guy maybe, I don't know, shoveling the crease after they're done using it or something. So it was kind of intimidating that way, but he's still a great guy as well. So.
Oh, well, I hope so. I mean, Fleury is always known as like that joker in the locker room now. And yeah, he likes to have fun. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a game and it's still entertainment. So if you're not having fun, what's the point?
Exactly.
All right, so our next question continues in the year 2002. Feels like yesterday, I'm sure for both of us, but yeah, it's 20 years now. But so 2002, you were still at the Erie Otters. You and your goaltending partner, TJ Assetti, helped lead the squad to the OHL championship and then into the semifinal of the Memorial Cup, which saw Victoriaville win in overtime. So Erie had few players that made it into the NHL from that roster, most notably Brad Boyes, Carlo Colaiacovo, and yourself. But by all accounts, the squad came together for a great season to come within one goal of making it to the Memorial Cup final. Were there any teammates from that roster that you had that you were surprised that they never made it into the NHL, and why?
It's tough. I mean, there's so many guys you think of, if that person had the chance, who knows? Would they have made it with their chances? Who knows what breaks they would have gotten? Some people get buried as a sixth centerman because they're so deep. It's sometimes it's luck of the draw. Our teams there were very, very good. You mentioned a bunch of names of guys that played in the NHL. I think even Chris Campoli was on those teams as well, and he played a ton of games as well. And I'm probably forgetting a few other names that got up there and played because we were so deep. That was an unfortunate year for myself. I battled injuries almost all season, and that was one of the reasons they got Acchetti from Oshawa at the time, who played absolutely unbelievable the whole season for us and was absolutely great goalie partner. I loved playing with the guy and very entertaining person. So, but I mean, you get to the Memorial Cup. Unfortunately, like you said, we didn't go to the finals, but it was an absolutely unbelievable experience. I think I had a broken hand at that point, so I had a blocker custom made. I was only sitting on the bench at that point, custom made to go over top of my blocker. So I had a cast kind of built where I could kind of grab my stick, and the cast was almost built like that, so I could grab onto my stick and still take shots. So the illusion that I wasn't injured, I guess,
just duct tape the stick around it so you don't let go.
There wasn't a lot of strength in that blocker hand, and I don't think I ever really got better in that blocker hand either. It was probably one of my main weaknesses is going through my whole career. But that team, there could have been any one of us could have gone. I mean, it was what I thought should have been a championship team that had an unfortunate kind of couple minutes, I guess, in the semifinals where it turned around on us. But any one of those guys, and the guys that did play were very deserved to get as many games as they did and play as long as they did.
Oh, I mean, it was a huge accomplishment nonetheless. I mean, coming within one goal of making it to the final is huge. And of course, like you mentioned too, that sort of a luck of the draw, and really so everyone can have the right breaks to make it into the NHL there. I mean, our first episode of this show was with Mike Morrison, and he mentioned it's sort of a combination of three things. One is you got to be in the face of management all the time. Obviously you have to be good. Obviously you're not playing hockey in those levels if you're not good. And then the luck of the draw. I mean, if you have the depth so deep in a roster and that's where you're drafted or that's where you're on a training camp, it's an uphill battle. So yeah, interesting you mentioned something very similar to those lines.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question is all about personalities. So goalies are notoriously eccentric and superstitious bunch. Some very subtle about it, and others are practically in outer space with it. Did you have any of your own pregame rituals or superstitions you always had to follow? And tying into that, what is the most unusual one that you have ever seen from a fellow skater or goalie?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely something. You get on a roll as a goalie. I think pitchers might have something similar as well in baseball, where you don't want anything to change. You want to have that exact same feeling going to that next game, and kind of keep it rolling. And there's all these things we can do with with visualization and kind of even through sense of what did it smell like that night at the rink, so you kind of can recall a bunch of different feelings from the game, so you can repeat what you did 2 nights before, where sometimes that's impossible depending on a bunch of different circumstances, but just kind of repeat successful performances where as hard as we train, we still are superstitious, right? It's
Right.
kind of odd with that with goalies for sure. Personally, I mean, pregame, there was a while there where I was only eating a Subway sub before a game. I think we're on something like a 26 game unbeaten streak or something ridiculous. So there was absolutely no way I was going to stop eating it. I think I ate it one game, not knowing I was going to get the start, and then I said, well, it worked last game, so why not keep going with it? And it did work for a while, for a long time there. Kind
Should
of.
have got a sponsorship deal with Subway there.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my $10 gift card from them for sure now.
Yeah,
But
there you go.
but there's also a bunch of stuff in game that you see goalies do as well. For me, it was really a weird superstition. I don't know where I picked it up from, but I would never step on the face-off circles. It was if I was skating around in between whistles during the play. Obviously, you can't be that superstitious with it. You'd be kind of tough to tiptoe over the face-off circle if I had to go play the puck. But when I skated to the corner, if I was just wheeling around in between whistles to kind of keep the legs fresh or just keep motion going, never to step on the face-off circle, which I know sounds absolutely ridiculous. But even playing the senior hockey a couple years ago, I noticed myself still doing it, and it's not even I don't even notice it anymore. It becomes just such a habit of this
Second nature.
a second nature, and you don't even notice. But as for stuff I've seen other goalies do, I mean, the players have some weird ones as well, but goalies, there's a lot. One goalie partner, Nikolai Habibulin, would have ice cubes, and he would sit in the dressing room in between periods and just rub the ice cubes on his eyes. Whether that was superstition or something to do with visual training, I'm not too sure. I never asked him. I never got too deep with him on it because I didn't want to bother his routine or whatever he did in between periods as well, because we all do our own thing. And if you start thinking about it, maybe it might throw you off. So just to give him a clear-headed, I would never ask him, but he would sit there and just have a whole thing of ice cubes and just rub his eyes in between periods for the whole time. And I never really understood what it was. If it was superstition, it was definitely the weirdest one I saw for sure.
That is interesting. I'll have to try and get him on the show and ask him about it at some point in the future.
For sure.
So we do have one person who's joined us in the comments who's actually quite excited about the show. So we have Neil Bronstein here who said, "Yeah, baby, Adam Munro and Bruce."
Bronzy, I was on his podcast that he had as well. He
Brunch with Bronzy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's got an amazing collection of vintage gear too. That's,
I've seen
that's
it
super
many
impressive. Yeah.
All right. So moving on up a year or 2 years now. So you turned pro in 2003, 2004, and what a roller coaster ride that whole season was. You began the season with Gwinnett in the ECHL, got recalled to Norfolk in November, and then you were recalled to the Chicago Blackhawks in February. On March 1st, 2004, you got the start and goal versus the Nashville Predators, and across the ice from you was a star of the NHL and Tomas Vokoun. So take us through the day of your first NHL start. How did you find out you would be playing in that game? And did any particular teammates or opponents of yours stand out in either encouraging you or even razzing you a little?
It was kind of weird. I had gotten called up. There was kind of the process of ECHL, AHL, NHL pretty quickly, and it was surprising how quickly it all happened. And it kind of felt like I was going to be in the ECHL all year. And like I said, luck of the break. Unfortunate for other guys, injuries, whatever might have happened, but just start crawling up the ladder, and a spot opened up, and you get to play. But I guess I found out the night before at dinner that I was going to play the game. So it kind of gave me a little bit of time to prepare, and not too much time where I'd get too worked up about it. And I knew Nashville was a pretty good team, and I'd followed Vokoun for a long time. I always liked his style. And just the morning was pretty normal. It was I'd go for the pregame skate. I don't remember stopping too many pucks. It was just kind of like, I need to get through this and just feel some. And it was a lot of nerves. I felt more nerves in the pregame skate than I did when the game finally came around.
Oh, yeah, once you get into the zone, yeah.
Yeah, once you get into that zone, and it's just kind of a different feeling of okay, I'm here, I have to do this. Like, I can't just run away. I'm gonna have to go and play this game. But in the morning skate, there's still that window of time where it's like, oh, well, you know, this is gonna actually happen. And then you start not even thinking about stopping the puck, and that's why pregame skate was horrendous. But yeah, and then, you know, get to the rink and the game played. I felt pretty good. I think we had a 1-0 lead or something after 2 periods, and it was like, you know, it starts going through your head, and that's where I got worked up a little bit. Probably the second half of the third period, I was like, this is going to be a shutout in the first game sort of thing. This is crazy. I hope they don't give up too many chances, you know, later in the game. And then I think I kind of let in a pretty bad goal for the first goal, where I might have angled my blocker the wrong way and it went in, and then I think I did a 2-pad stack on the second one or something crazy like
Old
that.
school.
Yeah, and it was just, as soon as I was doing it, I was like, what am I doing? I shouldn't have gone down here. And then we ended up tying it. And we ended up tying the game. Yeah, it was a 2-2 game. We ended up coming back with 10 seconds left or something and scoring the tying goal. And then I remember at the end of overtime, for some reason, Vokoun went after one of our defensemen, Vandermeer, or Mark Bell, I think maybe it was, or one of the forwards. And so I had to skate down and almost try to fight Vokoun at the end of the game. And I got down there, I skated all the way down. It was delayed because I was asking the coach if I could go down. Is it all right? And the coach finally said, you know, go ahead, whatever. I don't really care, sort of thing. I don't think I was starting next game, is pretty much what he was telling me at that time. And so I skated down and got to Vokoun, who just kind of looked at me, and the ref put his hands up and said, stop. What are you doing down here? And I said, it's my first day. I don't know. And all he said,
classic excuse. I love it. It's my first day.
It's my first. And then he just said, go stand over there on the bottom of the circle, and I'll give you 2 minutes. And I said, done. Good. I got my first penalty minute in the NHL. First game. I look like a goon now. I'm ahead of Ron Hextall, and, you know, penalty minutes per game. So I'm happy. I'll take that 2 minutes. And I think I yelled maybe something at Vokoun, and he didn't even respond to me. So I said, you know what, better. I just kind of let this go, and I'll just, you know, gradually skate back to my net, and we'll take the tie and get out of here. So.
So did any of your teammates help you out at all during your first game there?
I didn't even remember who the other goalie was to back up that game. It's a good question. There was so much going on that day, but everyone kind of came in, so, you know, go out there, have fun, sort of thing. It was more of a relaxed atmosphere. We were pretty far in the playoffs at that point, so there was not a lot of pressure on, you know, winning every single game. It was just kind of, you know, get the young guys in there and see if they can play for the next year, sort of thing. So there was a lot of young guys there, so the advice wasn't really there from the older players or anything like that. It was a lot of young players and a lot of just go out there with lots of energy and see what happens.
Interesting. Yeah, like you and the Pittsburgh Penguins were very similar around that time in terms of rebuilding, lots of injuries, and I mean, both squads built up quite nicely, very similar timing as well after the lockout there. I mean, both were cup winner mini dynasties within a few years, really.
Yeah, it was really amazing how you like you said, it was pretty similar. The organizations at that time, it seemed, were they were kind of battling for the basement or somewhere down there, but they had a ton of young talent stocked, and you know, Pittsburgh had it in Wilkes-Barre. I remember not liking playing them at all when I was in the minors. It was first of all, their shots on goal guy was always the worst, so you knew you were going to get ripped off 10-15 shots, and they would score 6, so you knew you were going to be in trouble anyway. So they were coming down. They'd always be buzzing there, so it was a frustrating time there. But it's both organizations, young talent, and even with us in Norfolk at the time was unbelievable how much young talent we had.
So we do have a question for you in the comments section. I'll actually bring that up. It ties in pretty well with the next question, actually. So perfect. So we have Frank Wager, who says, "Hi, Adam. Who was your favorite goalie, and who did you model your career after?"
I think Frank maybe was a goalie too. I think maybe he was my favorite goalie. I think that's my uncle. So so I can say hi to him, give him a big shout out there. But yeah, he as for favorite goalie and who did I model myself after, I guess is the question you said. Favorite goalie growing up was Patrick Waugh. It was kind of the perfect time where he was reinventing, I guess, the game, and, you know, being born in '82, and he wins the Stanley Cup a few years after I'm born and is the hero of the city. And my dad was a big Montreal fan too. We used to go to Montreal Forum a lot, which was really nice, and a great thing to sit behind a legendary goalie and warm up. And now they have the netting up. Back then they didn't, so you could see clear. And the pucks would be flying by my head and warm up as I'm trying to pick them up, and seeing all these, just seeing Patrick Waugh from a close position. So growing up, he was definitely the goalie I admired and loved his style. But as I started playing, I realized I didn't really have his style, because he was 6'3" and had a little bit lankier arms and longer legs, and I was 6'1", 6'2", but I did kind of a shorter reach, I guess I should say. So I really liked Marty Brodeur. I mean, it was his flashy style to a certain extent. I mean, he was still positionally sound, but could read plays so well. And him, and I guess Cujo too was a huge one for me. I loved his style. It looked like he was guessing a lot, but he was anticipating the play and kind of forcing guys to shoot in bad areas. And once I started noticing what he was doing and how he could read the play so well coming into, was really amazing.
Good thing you didn't say you modeled your style after Dominik Hasek. I'd be like, only Hasek can pull that one off.
Yeah, I'd need the helmet for that one. I couldn't pull it off without the helmet. So.
Do the little headbutts to deflect away the pucks.
I think so, yeah.
So our next question, as I said, ties in kind of to goalies there. So with the Chicago Blackhawks in a bit of a rebuild and also struggling with veteran goalie injuries in the 03-04 and 05-06 seasons, there were multiple other young goalies in addition to yourself fighting to make it, such as Matt Underhill, Michael Layton, Craig Anderson, both when his name was with one S and two S's, and Corey Crawford. On top of that, when healthy, there were also the already established veterans in the lineup, such as Steve Passmore, Jocelyn Thibault, and Nikolai Khabibulin, naturally limiting rookie ice time when available. So now we fast forward to the NHL of 2022-23, a little tongue twister there, and your former teammate Craig Anderson is still in the league, and even at the age of 41, performing quite well for the Buffalo Sabres. Playing with him, did you ever foresee that he would become such a long-time NHLer?
Nobody can really tell at that point. I don't think. You never know what kind of injuries are going to happen. He took very good care of himself. I'll give him credit for that. And I mean, he plays a style that's pretty compact. You don't see him stretching out too much. He's like the goalies I mentioned before. He understands what's happening out there. He can read the play, and that really saves his body a lot. Not to say he doesn't make a lot of big saves. He really does, and he's a really smart goalie. But he just understands the game so well that it really helps him. It lets him go that far. Being 22, 21, you're battling with the guy, so you're saying, well, hopefully I'm ahead of this guy this year, sort of thing. And it was tough. I mean, Layton had an unbelievable. He's probably one of the best AHL goalies of all time. Got to play in the Stanley Cup final against the Blackhawks, actually.
Oh yeah, with Philadelphia, yeah.
Yep. And then Anderson had a lot of long career and a ton of wins and a ton of games under his belt and some deep playoff runs as well. But yeah, I don't know if you could tell from, like, it's like asking if Phil Kessel, if anybody would thought he would be the Iron Man of the NHL. It's something that's unexpected, and Phil, just like Craig, are very smart players, and they know how to not put himself in a bad spot. I think Craig had a bad injury earlier on, I think, with his hip. I'm sure he's had a number of them injuries since then as well, but just took care of himself real well. So it's impressive to see him play, and the level he's played at for such a long time.
Oh, yeah, it definitely took him a few years to sort of take off as well there, where he got into, I think, a handful of games in his first season, then I think like 20-some games in 05-06 there, and then he was placed on waivers a couple times, and then a dozen games with Florida, and then just sort of had the right breaks, ended up with the right team, and then, he was a workhorse for a while there, carrying 70 games per season. And then, never looked back from there. And I think he was also within a win or two of making it to the Stanley Cup final with Ottawa that one year.
Well, that's something you said right there by itself, is when you say 60 or 70 games, it's not easy, first of all, to play that many games as a goalie, even if it's with playoffs, without playoffs, whatever it might be. But then to play at an elite level and to be one of the top goalies in the league is a whole nother story too, because, anybody can go out there, well, not anybody, but if, a weaker team, maybe go out and you play 55, 60 games, but they're rebuilding, who cares, whatever. They don't, it's a rebuilding project. But like I said, top level elite goaltending, 60, 70 games, that's not seen very often.
And then especially nowadays, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, where used to be fairly common to have guys have 77 games, 78 games a season as a starter, and
Mhm.
backup just kind of just part of the experience. And then now 60 is like a good number for a solid number one.
Yeah, that's a ton of games. I mean, you get anything above, I always thought 45 to 50 was a challenge. It's a lot of work to take in. You're getting in as well when you're not playing. You're still sitting on the bench. You're still traveling with the team. You got your exhibition games, and then you got your playoff games on top of that. So, you could get up to some of these guys were getting up to close to 100 games in a season, which is crazy for a goalie. But if you're smart and you take care of your body and understand the game where you're not. I mean, the goaltending has changed 100% over the last 5-6 years, I would say, especially where goalies are more explosive and more flexible and can get to pucks that we older generation, I guess you can call us now, couldn't get to just because of inflexibility, and the
Right.
equipment had a little bit to do it as well. It was a little bit heavier. Your knees, you have the knee rolls, so you're rolling over on your knees rather than staying flush. So that hampers it, and the speed skin or whatever they have on the inside of pads now too, it just gets them over so fast. And they're seeing saves that we haven't seen ever before, which are just astonishing now.
Got to bring back the old brown leather pads, put everything on an even level again.
Yeah, I wore those not too long ago, and they do not slide. I found out
No.
very quickly. It's like sliding on sandpaper. You just stop, and then you kind of
That's why they're
topple over.
perfect for the stand-up style.
Exactly,
And they
stand
were
up.
also a good leg workout when you got a couple periods of action and it just builds up the moisture.
Yeah, soaks it right up. You get
Oof.
you start with 10 pounds, you end with 30. So
Hey, little workout, get massive quads by the end.
exactly.
All right, so next question again ties right in with our previous question there. So, in our fifth episode of the show, we had Steve Passmore as a guest, and he's a very interesting personality, very outgoing, and just no filter. And it was fantastic. So we have a question from Billy Ramirez who says, please share as many Steve Passmore stories, just for the sake of time, maybe a Steve Passmore story. And he's also asking if you remember Matt Underhill at all.
Yeah, Matt. I remember Matt coming up from the ECHL to play a game for us. I think he obviously would have called him up. I think probably from the American League at that time somewhere. But his story was pretty cool. Where I think I had a concussion at the time, and then Leighton was supposed to start, and he had inner ear infection. So I think he just showed up, and then they were like, "You're starting, like you got the game." So really kind of like almost somewhat similar to how I started, where there's no time for him to really think about it. He played a great game, by the way. I remember sitting up in the press box, and he had a really good game, held us in, and I think we lost in overtime. But it was
Oh,
unbelievable for him to get a start and play as well as he did. But as for Passmore, I mean, we didn't play together too much. It was my first year. He was up and down all year with injuries. I think I was mainly down up for a tiny bit at the end there, but he was kind of a good, because at that point we had Vladislav Tretiak as our goalie coach,
right.
and it was just kind of getting into the start of Stefan Waite coming in there.
Mhm.
But the kind of the in between where we didn't really receive Vladdy that much and he wouldn't come over to getting to Stefan Waite was when Passmore was down. He would help me out in practice a few times, whether we were doing goalie drills or whatever, and he was voice on my ear and just kind of helping, because I was, like I said, I was really really raw, and the goalie training I had was good, but I mean now it's at this elite level and it's completely different. So there was just some stuff that he did that really simplified my game and really helped out. He's he's a great guy, and I'm sure the stories that other people have are a lot better. But unfortunately, we didn't really know each other that well when we played together there. But it was parts of the 1 year, I guess, we played together. But I appreciated what he did for me. It was great.
And as I said, he's a great personality. I mean, you can't have anyone better than that on your team. When
Oh yeah,
I mean, better than a depressing person, that's for sure.
exactly.
Okay, so next question. Now we're a year past that lockout there, no 405. So the 2005-2006 season was a very exciting one for the NHL, as it marked one of the most exciting rookie classes in 15 years, with names such as Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, Ryan Getzlaf, Jeff Carter, and Zach Parise, just to name a few. On top of that, it was an era which also still saw many greats of the game still in action. So were there any particular shooters among the rookies or legends that you disliked facing because they always seem to score all the time? And we have a follow-up question after that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised actually with the intro that you found so many saves, because most of the video would be them scoring on me. So
I'm good at making highlight videos.
yeah, maybe they scored on me right after, and you cropped that part out. No, but there was some, obviously some big names that you'd want to play against. And the rookies, I think being in the game, you don't recognize it as much as being out, maybe. Where when Crosby came in, it was like, we've heard this 1,000 times. This is going to be the next big player. Let's kind of see it. I got to play against him once, and it was a lot of fun playing against him. It was a little more interesting playing against Ovechkin, because he was just like all over the place. It was like he was like a water bug out there. It was
one of the videos in the highlight there, showed him just skating and then on his butt trying to score on you, trying to pull that Brian Boucher move, but no goal on that one.
No, he did get one on me in that game, so at least he scored one on me, that I can be part of that list of goalies that he's scored on at least. So when he does get high enough that then they'll recall all the goalies, maybe I'll get on there a little bit. But
honorable mention.
Playing Pittsburgh was going to be really interesting, because we were at home. I knew it was going to be a sold-out game, so I was kind of excited to play it. Marc-Andre Fleury was in the other net. I played against him a bunch already in the minors when he was down there. And Crosby was there. It was his first game in Chicago, so everyone was coming out to see him. I think he was wearing the A at that point already, at 18 years old or something. So, but the person that I was disappointed that he didn't show up to play was Mario. I think at that point he was injured, and he was off for quite a while that year. And I was really excited to play against him, and hopefully, whether it was get to talk to him for a second on the ice, or let him score or stop him. I don't know, whatever it might have been, would have been cool regardless. But, it was disappointing not to play against him, but at least Crosby was there, and, he had a pretty good game, but I tied him in points that game, so I wasn't too upset.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh even had Ziggy Palffy on the roster that year. I believe, can't remember if Mark Recchi was also in there in 05-06.
I'm not even too sure.
There's a lot of big names all over the place. That's why I said it was an exciting year, because there's that combination of lots of big up and comers, as well as a lot of the superstars coming up to the end there. So the follow-up question for that is, did you have any positive memories of any particular veterans, stars, or greats of the game who were still playing at the time?
There was people. It's very social on the ice, which I didn't realize. Coming up in junior, I think it was more everybody wanted to get ahead of you and kind of step over you, so there wasn't as much socialization. In there, it felt like you were talking all the time, whether it be the ref, player crashing in front of you, and then it's not really yelling at you. Sometimes it's just a conversation. And one of the main guys, I remember, it wasn't a very good game for me against Dallas. I think maybe we 4 or 5-0, whatever it might have been. But every time there was a play where Modano was in front of the net, he'd be stopping and talking, and it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of neat. Like, I have a nice conversation with somebody on the ice.
Oh yeah.
And it was pretty neat in that aspect. So I saw that a little bit more, and I kind of watched it as I started watching games. I kind of see in front of the net, you see people talking, and before I just thought people were yelling at each other. I thought they were maybe bad mouthing, but sometimes it's just a regular innocent conversation that happens out there as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of people just assume that as well. Even if you're watching in the arena, it's a lot of yelling. You're wondering what it's about. You never really hear the context. So
trying to figure out where to go to dinner after the game, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like that big goalie fight between Van Beesbrook and Kelly Rudy years ago, and then they went to dinner afterwards, and they were saying it was an awkward little dinner.
yeah, I could imagine that. It's if you're friends with a goalie and you try to fight him, I can't imagine it ever being too normal. But I got in a fight in minors one time, and
actually, we're actually going to be jumping into the next question. Perfectly timed that way, may I add. So speaking of 2006, I hear a noise. What is this? Oh, it's a bell. So it's time for a goalie fight breakdown. One of my favorite segments of the show all the time. So on April 9th, 2006, you and the Norfolk Admirals were on the road facing the Philadelphia Phantoms when the fisticuffs went down at just over halfway mark of the game. You also continued I'll say proud tradition of former Sioux Greyhounds goalies dropping the gloves in the pros, which included your former coach, John Van Beesbrook, as we mentioned, Ray Emery, Dan Kluche, Robin Lehner, and Marc Damour in the 1980s there. So in this fight, you and Martin Hull met at center ice. Goalie fights are very uncommon, but no matter the results, they all live in infamy. So let's take a look at that goalie fight, and then let's break it down a little bit. So we'll bring it up on the stream here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember this being at the old Spectrum there, and then I think maybe the spirit of Ron Hextall was floating around, or some of his fighting spirit. He's still alive, obviously, but but it just was. I remember that was our third game in 3 nights. I think it might have been an afternoon game too. And for some reason, the league decided that we should play 2 home games in Virginia and then drive up to Philadelphia on a Sunday for an afternoon game, 7-hour drive overnight. Basically, we got off the bus and started playing. So needless to say, it wasn't too fun of a game overall. And I think at this point, it might have been 4-3 or 5-3 for Philly in the second. And it might have been early in the second too. And they just scored, and a guy just came by and slashed my wrist when I covered the puck. Mm-hmm. And that, didn't really set me off that much, but I tried to fight him in the corner, and then the ref took me and put me back in the crease and said, stay. And I said, oh, okay, I'm fine. I was just mad for a second. And then I saw the other goalie standing at center ice, and I said, okay, let's just go. Who cares? I'm going to fight him now. And kind of picks up where it started there, where I got up there, and I didn't know anything about this, about Mool at all, but we played against him a few times, so I knew, really good goalie. But yeah, I mean, we just kind of grabbed each other, and I thought to myself, please don't punch me in the face. I'm going to just kind of raise my elbow, my shoulder, so you can punch me there the whole time or in the back. It didn't really matter to me. And I think I got him right off the start. I punched him once, and I said, that's good for me. I just wanted one. I'm done. I'm just going to grab on his shoulders and see what happens here. So
were there any really hard feelings between the two of you after that?
No. Surprisingly, okay. we actually, because at the Spectrum, you had the same hallway where you could meet up. I'm assuming there was a lot of fights back in the day. But
the old days, yeah.
Yeah. So he started walking down the hallway after we both got kicked out of the game. I think Crawford had taken over for me. I don't know who took over for Philly at that point. But so he came down to the dressing room, and I was like, oh no. Like round 2, what's going on here? I don't know. I've never seen this before. So I'm gonna have to fight a guy.
No referees around for that.
No referees. There was one security guard who was eating popcorn, and you could tell he'd not gonna move out of his seat. And it was just like, okay, I don't know what's happening. And he came. He's like, oh, great fight. He was really calm, and he started asking me how many times I'd fought before. I said, I think I grabbed a few goalies on the shoulders and just held on, but I don't think I've ever gotten an actual fight. And he, I think he told me he was a trained boxer or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm very glad you didn't punch me in the face, because I'd be in a totally different spot. I'd probably be in the hospital right now if that was the case. But yeah, I guess he'd fought a lot at that point, and I was just kind of happy after the game finding out that I didn't get anything too bad, no punches to the face or anything. So
fair enough. But I mean, if we watch the video a little further to the end, we'll see you had an epic takedown though at the end, just a good old hip tackle right there.
Yeah, at this point I knew I was in trouble. When he started punching my back, I just said, you know what, this is gonna just start hammering down on the back. He's gonna eventually punch me in the head. So I think I just try to grab low and throw him down. But I remember talking to that was a terrible punch attempt, but I think
that was a nice hip takedown there.
I think I had probably 50 pounds on him, so that was another thing as well. But he did break his hand here, which I felt really bad about, because when we were talking in the hallway, I found out that when he did land on the ice, he smashed his hand off the ice and it broke. So
geez,
he was done for the year after that. So
man.
I did feel kind of bad. I think I apologized to him, even though we were just fought. But yeah, it seemed like a really nice guy, and never fought him again. So there was no number 2 or the sequel or no Rockies.
Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I've never talked to him, but he's always seemed like a calm guy after the talk in the hallway right after a fight, where I would think I was probably still elevated a little bit from the fight, and he was super calm and just made me calm as well.
Oh, fair enough. Plus, I mean, he had his NHL shot too as well, so he's also one of those heroes of the crease who made it in. I think it was only one game, but again, as we talked about yesterday, that's still one more game than 99.9% of people ever get to, and still only one of 849 in history. So that's a
definite accomplishment. Yeah, you have some guys that could play 20 years in the minors or 15 years in the minors and never get a break. So to get even one game, it's an experience that'll stay with you forever, I'm sure. I mean, even to recall my story to you about 20 years later now, we talked about that, and it still feels somewhat fresh. Not as fresh as it was 5 years ago, 10. Maybe the story's changed a bit. Maybe it has a little in that aspect, but yeah, it'll live long, and I'm sure it'll grow within time, like most stories do. It'll probably get a little bit crazier. Maybe the coach told me 2 minutes before I went on the ice that I was starting, and the stories change as time goes along. The grandkids come around. Maybe that's the story that I got thrown in 2 seconds before we get off the bus, or something like that for them. But it's amazing to go back and remember that stuff, and have the whole family remember it as well. So.
Oh yeah, and again, shows like this are great because they immortalize a lot of these stories, and you hear a lot of things that just they pop up in the natural course of a conversation that you wouldn't even think of mentioning. And yeah, this is why I love doing it.
It's amazing.
All right, so our next question, speaking of players and teammates, who would you say was your all-time favorite goaltending partner throughout your entire hockey career, and why? And I'm sure that's a tough one to answer.
I actually went through a list a couple years ago and just started writing down all my old goalie partners just to kind of remember all of them, because it's amazing. I moved around a lot, and I'm sure that's typical with goalies. It seems like you're in one day, out the next, for any sort of goalies that aren't the elite number one starter sort of situation. You're always trying to find your next gig sort of thing. It's like like a drummer almost that's getting fired from every band. Like, if you guys need a drummer, I'll come over there and play for you. So I was in a bunch of different bands, and for the most part, I really enjoyed every goalie. I mean, not to sound too weird with it, but we always had a good relationship. Whoever came down, it was always a give and take. Probably more give from them, because at that point, I felt like I was saying, still pretty raw, still learning the game almost. Where some other guys would come into pro so polished and ready to go. So there was a lot more learning from me in the first few years, and then the last years teaching a bit was a lot of fun, but. There was oh gosh, that's a tough one. I'm trying to think about back with all the goalies now. So, well, actually, the goalie partner I have in Senior A, Daniel Sweden. He came over from Sweden. He played over there, actually over in Europe for a bunch of years, and then came over to our senior hockey in Ontario, and got married over here, and been playing for the team for a number of years, in league for a number of years, I should say. And he's an absolutely great guy. Love that guy. He's so amazing. And made it a joy to come to the rink on a Friday night after work when you're going to the game and you're getting 60 or 70 shots against you. And he made it enjoyable being the other goalie, and really loved having him in the room, and as moral support was unbelievable. Even if I had 7 goals against me in a period, he'd still come in and say, "Hey, great period." And it's like, I know I didn't have a good period, but just the moral support you get from him I got from him was amazing.
The positive energy is infectious. That's what they say. Yeah. So no, I like to hear that, and it's not just NHL, of course. So we're still in the NHL for our next question here. So in your 17 NHL games, you were thrown into action against a lot of legendary and significant star goalies, including Martin Brodeur, Olaf Kolzig, Marc-Andre Fleury, Chris Osgood, Nikolai Khabibulin, Jean-Sébastien Giguère, and Mika Kiprusoff, just to name a few. You seem to have some of your very best games against these stars, and even got your first NHL shutout against the Calgary Flames squad, which was one NHL season removed from a Stanley Cup final run. Was there something about the pressure of facing so-called big names that elevated your own game? And also take us through the feeling of recording your first NHL shutout. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it was always. I mean, from a goalie's perspective, I feel like I always felt like I try to match the other goalie's energy. Sometimes it's not a good thing if they let in 3 hit the first shots they face, but you kind of go off the other goalie. If the other goalie's going well, you feel like, well, I've got to really elevate my game at this point too, in certain aspects. Whether it's overtime, late in the game, whatever, the other guy's making huge saves, you got to stretch out and really sell yourself out to make a save for. But it was interesting to play against. Brodeur was a lot of fun. It was just interesting to watch him from the other end. I'd never seen him at ice level before, and it was really cool to see how he read plays, how he played the puck was very interesting, because I'm not sure if that was after they made the rule, but you can go behind the net and out of the trapezoid, but I think it might have been.
506,
it changed up a little bit. But I enjoyed playing against Kolzig because I think I beat him twice, so I wouldn't mind playing him more. But not to say anything bad against him. He was on a very young Washington Capitals team it's kind of similar to ours, but not quite down there where we were in the rebuild process.
Oh, yeah. And your 0506 win against them actually snapped a 10-game losing streak for the Blackhawks, and that's always a big thing.
Yeah, it was entertaining to watch the video from the overtime goal because it brought back some memories where we scored the goal. We thought it was a goal, and then our coach, I think it was Trent Young at the time, said, "You know what? I don't even care. Just go in the room and get changed." They were going to do the review. The review wasn't done. He said, "Either way, we're leaving. I don't care. Everybody go get changed in the room." So I remember sitting there, like my pads were off. I'm like, "Did we actually win? Did we actually win? I don't even know yet."
Go with it.
Yeah, and then so they came in with the official score sheet after a couple of minutes after, but we just left. It was kind of odd. We said, no matter what the outcome, I think we're just out of here. We're done with this. We won. We're going to say we won. So it was interesting for sure.
It's a good strategy. That's what every team should do. If they're not sure about something going to video review, just go back to the dressing room and they're like, we can't recall it. It'll just be too much work to bring them back. Just give them the goal.
Just give them the win. Just give them the win. But yeah, there was, like you mentioned, there were some other big names for sure. Kiprasov, I think we played against them 2 games in a row.
Yeah, back to back.
The second game didn't go as well, but the first one went pretty well. It was that was my only shutout, but it was exciting to play against Kiprasov because he was so mobile and his butterfly was so wide, and you'd get across so fast, and he was just so athletic in there. Where I didn't feel like I was that athletic watching him, and everybody's style is so different. But just watching that, I just wished I could have been. I mean, he was a little bit shorter than I was, and his flexibility was ridiculous. But it was just astonishing. Some of these goalies you watch them at their end, it's like I didn't notice this on TV or seeing highlights, but this person is like legit one of the best goalies I've ever seen in my life, and it's just a joy to watch him sometimes. And I felt like that was the energy, as I mentioned before, that I fed off of that game, the first game against Calgary, where it just felt cool to play against Kiprasov. Just watching him the year before, or 2 years before, I guess it was. In the Stanley Cup Finals, or what was it? Was it around that? Whatever, it was around that time. Playing as well as he did, leading up to that point, it was just a really good goalie.
Oh yeah, and yeah, it was the 03-04 season. They were in the Cup Final against Tampa Bay. There, slipped my mind for a second.
Yeah.
And we did talk about it a bit yesterday there about when you look at a lot of those goalies from the time span, even I'd say up to like 2010-ish and back, you could have them in all black, no identifying features, but you watch them play the way they do, you could identify them in a second. And now I find it a lot more difficult to be like, that's that goalie, unless you see, of course, the nameplate or the gear.
Yeah, I always thought it was the art of goaltending. You create your own personalized style. You take what you learn from multiple coaches and kind of mold this form that works for you, because everyone's style is somewhat similar. Now it's still a little bit different, but they still do have a similar look. The size has something to do with that as well, because if you can cover something and you don't need to make the big flashy windmill save, and you can just hold your glove there as a 6'5" goalie, I would say every time, just hold your glove there and cut off that puck early. But it's amazing that the personalized styles have kind of gone out the door, and it's a very unified style, it seems like, to a certain aspect. I mean, you can tell different countries for sure. You can tell the Canadian goalies, you can tell the American, European, or all their own breeds, and the amazing goalie coaches out there as well that really train their goalies in different ways. So
okay. Yeah, no, it's you can definitely tell for sure. So we have a comment. Curious if this is something, I'm not entirely sure. Might have to do with your gear. Billy Ramirez once again asks, did you invent the sock graphic?
Yeah, I did it with that time. It was I actually have the socks back here.
Oh, yes.
See them, but there they are.
Oh, yes. Yeah, on the
sitting
pad.
there.
Okay, that's
but
what I was
yeah, I did it with it was the Vaughn rep at the time, and I remember it was odd because I was faxing in the design I wanted, and they're like, "Why are why are they sideways? All the lines? We can't do that." I'm like, "Just stitch over top." And we figured out something that worked. We went through a couple. It's not a very difficult design, but Yeah, in 2003, I think it was, we came up with it, or 2004. It might have been the lockout year that we first got it going. And then I think after I wore it in 05, 06, I think it was 6, 07, Harding might have started wearing it. And that's when it actually became popular, because he got a lot more eyes on it, obviously. But yeah, I worked on it with Vaughn back then when I had a contract with them.
And that's the Vaughn Velocity set by the looks of it.
Yeah, they're probably the V2s, I'd imagine.
I got a few in the museum have Ray Emery's and Jamie McLennan's set.
Yeah, they are very, very soft. They're actually pads that I took over to Switzerland with me, and my goalie partner at the time, the team wouldn't buy him new pads, so I gave him these pads when I got my new pads in, so he'd have something for the year. And then he actually found them a couple months ago, or maybe a year ago, and sent them back to me. So it was really nice of him to actually go out of his way to get them and send them back. And I realized how much shipping is from Switzerland to Canada for pads, and now I know why they charge so much for pads over there, because the shipping is atrocious. It was I might as well just bought a new set of pads at that point.
Fair enough, but the new pads don't have those stories to tell.
Exactly.
That's the big one. So after a season in Switzerland, since you mentioned Switzerland in 06-07, you got the opportunity to represent Team Canada in the Spengler and Deutschland Cups. What did it mean to you to represent your home country in action?
It was pretty neat. I mean, I think I got to represent them 3 times that year. It was pretty amazing. The first one being the Deutschland Cup, and it was in Hamburg and Hanover in Germany, way up north there. And it was a fun experience. You say a lot of countries were coming up. I think Japan might have been in the tournament that year. So you saw 2006, 2007 Japanese team that was still in the infancy of kind of what they were trying to do. They've grown a ton since then. Like every country has.
Fukufuji.
Yeah, I don't. He might have been there. I'm not even too sure, but. It was a really fun tournament. I think we got bronze. I didn't have a great game in the semifinals, I think it was, which, I mean, first experience with Team Canada, I think it might have been nerves, but and I think that kind of brought the mindset in for Team Canada to bring in 3 goalies for the Spengler Cup. So there was actually 3 of us there. It was Justin Pogge, Devin Dubnyk, and myself. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to play a game there. It's a very different atmosphere up in Davos. They have an outdoor practice every year for the Team Canada right outside the rink, and it was pretty cool. It was impossible to see a puck because the light's coming right in your eyes and bouncing off the ice, so you couldn't I don't think I made a save there. It's kind of like my first before my first game, but it was a really cool experience to go and play for Team Canada. There was a lot of big names. I think Pat Quinn was our coach that year, so it was really neat to represent Canada, at least for 1 year, and get a few experiences with it and some free jerseys. So
hey, there you go.
Got to take them home, which was nice.
Oh, fair enough. And I know a lot of those Spengler Cup jerseys are pretty hot stuff. They don't pop up too often.
They got a few advertisements on them for sure. I think it's it's somewhere in the house. I should have found that one, but I'm pretty sure now I have a coffee stain on it from who knows what. One of the moves I've made over the years. So. Yeah, it's still a pretty cool jersey. It's mainly advertisements, but it's pretty neat to have that and have at least a game experience of wearing it as well, and getting that one game in.
Plus, it has that maple leaf on it, so you were Canada's goalie there for a while. Yeah, I can relate. I was a former Team Canada athlete in martial arts, so I know I get that feeling of representing your country in action and what it means for sure. I still have that uniform somewhere in one of my closets.
It's a different level, that's for sure. It's a different feeling and a different level. That was the main thing. You hit a level of nerves, and then I feel like when it's the country, it's a different set of nerves that almost hits and kind of raises you up a little bit to play even better. I don't know why, but your adrenaline starts going, and it's a good feeling. Yeah.
So in 2009-10, you began the season with the Toronto Marlies, but you headed to play in the KHL thereafter. This then led to the next 5 seasons of your pro hockey career being spent in several countries throughout Europe, including Italy, Hungary, and Austria. You even helped Hungary's Szekesfehervar squad win the EBEL championship that year. How was it different playing overseas for so long, and did you have any particularly memorable experiences while there?
Yeah. So I mean, 09 to 2010 was the Olympic year when the Olympics were in Vancouver, I believe. So it wasn't very popular when I was in Russia. I think when Team Canada did so well, it was definitely some anger there. But it was a lot of fun to go to the KHL. It was obviously there's a million stories you could tell about it, and it's definitely different to live up there over there, I guess I should say. But it was a neat experience to go there, and kind of thankfully I had the first experience in Switzerland already, so I knew kind of what to expect when I went to Russia, but not really in the same point. And you don't expect to go upstairs and to a vault and to get your money with two armed guards standing beside you. It's definitely odd. It's definitely not how it works in the American League of the NHL. I can tell you that much. And it's a bag of cash, and they kind of give it to you and say, "Here, go away," sort of thing. But it's definitely that was an experience that kind of helped. Everywhere else I went, at least I could think, oh, it's not as bad as that. So you're okay. But Hungary was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing there. I think we won it was actually the Hungarian championship we won. So after they play in the EBEL, which was the Erste Bank League, now it's called Ice Hockey or Ice League.
They shortened up the name a lot. I was looking, they got rid of the EB part,
And so after Hungary would lose, they would go down a level and play in the Hungarian league. So we'd go in there, and they'd win every year by a lot. It was substantially different from the Austrian league to the Hungarian league. But yeah, it was a neat experience to go play in those games and to win a championship with them. It was a lot of fun. I think I had a couple assists in playoffs, so it's starting to feel pretty good. I was almost going to join the rush, but it was
pull a Patrick Waugh, do the little loop around.
I should have skated all the way up. But yeah, so 4 years in the Austrian league to kind of finish off the career was a blast. I really enjoyed that league, and still a lot of friends that are involved in that league and that ref that league. It's just really neat to see the league kind of thrive now and taking even more countries and to have teams that have such a fan support. Innsbruck had amazing fan support. The team I played for there, Szekesfehervar as well, was as I try to butcher the name, I think I never learned it in 2 years I lived there, but I try to get through it. But they had an amazing fans, amazing fan base, and one of the nicest group of fans I've ever met. Where if I was out at dinner or something, they would go out of their way to come over, say hi, buy a drink or whatever it might be. But it's just really easygoing people that really enjoyed hockey for sure and had a passion for it.
And one of your teammates from Szekesfehervar there, he's on the Edmonton Oilers right now, Derek Ryan. So I was just looking, he took one heck of an interesting route to make it to the NHL. Like he went to University of Alberta, played for Golden Bears. I was actually at the U of A when he was playing there, and then he worked his way to Europe, and you two were on the same squad, and he worked his way up to the NHL, and there he is in the show right now. Good.
Yeah, we sat beside each other in the room. It was always interesting to kind of speak with him every morning, and it was just nice because he had hockey knowledge, and he was a very talented player. So when he played with us his first year, he had a ton of goals. I think 20 goals in the first half of the season. But then I think some of the effect of coming from Canadian University, not playing that many games, kind of kicked in. And it's only a 55 game season, but I think he did it smart by coming and playing for us, playing 55, 60 games, and then going to North America to play the treacherous 80, 82 game season, which is baffling to everybody. I don't really know why they play that many games, but it was just interesting to sit beside that guy in the room. I saw him a couple years ago in Buffalo, I think right before the pandemic hit, and it was just nice to see the guy. He's had an amazing career, and he's done so well, and I'm so happy for him. And he's such a good player, and he gave it all he had every game in practice as well. So it's frustrating as a goalie when I'm running into this guy that is giving everything he has all practice. Now it's going to drive up my level, which in turn makes me a better goalie because now I've got to up my level in practice, and it helps me in the games. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you put in maybe 90% in practices, and then you have someone pushing you harder. Then you push in 100%, but then by the next game, that 100% is now your 90%. So of course, that's how you improve. No, I like it. And Derek Ryan, absolutely. I mean, he definitely made a little name for himself there. I mean, he has the Oilers franchise record right now for the oldest player to ever score a hat trick for the Oilers. So that's a cool little accolade to have amongst the team with a long history of record breakers.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool to have.
It was a trivia night during the playoffs at one of the pubs in town, and that's when I learned that.
That's amazing.
Just because I'm actually Hungarian, from a Hungarian family, and I speak it, read it right, I have to ask: did you learn any Hungarian while you were there?
Yeah. I mean, I can say not so many good words, but the one things that I started thinking about last night were the normal words. I guess it'd be food more than anything. Was
Okay.
the shite creme levish. Shite creme
Mm-hmm.
levish would
Okay.
be a
Yeah.
cheese cream soup, and then
Mm-hmm.
chokis chiga was a chocolate snail, like
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah, Csoki's Csiga again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, those things were so, and
Oh,
pagachas too. Pagacha was like the
the Pogacha. Yeah.
oh, they were so they'd get them on every road trip, and I think that's why I had to leave after 2 years. Is like they rolled me out the door. They're like, "You've ate
Like
enough
it just
pagachas. Get
go in
out
the
of
net
here."
and you
What
fit.
do
Don't
yeah,
even need to make a save.
yeah, exactly. Filling up the net a little bit more at that point for sure. But their
Oh, yeah.
food was so good. It was amazing. So those are the three words, and then you remember the numbers and the
Mhm,
hellos and goodbyes, which were pretty easy when you say "sia" or
mhm,
"siastok" or whatever it might
mhm.
be. So you can get by with just kind of mumbling a few words. I think I mumble a lot of English anyway, so mumbling
Fair
Hungarian
enough.
is kind of natural for me. So
Hey, there you go. I like that. Okay. So in 2015, at only the age of 33, you made the decision to retire from play. What motivated that decision? And looking back throughout your whole hockey journey, what was your favorite memory or save? And do you have any regrets?
Yeah, 33. I came home and I started training. I was going to keep playing for, I thought, like everybody thought we are going to play till 50. Only Jaromir Jagr and Chris Chelios can never do that. But
Yeah.
it felt like I was going to go till late 30s, kind of 38 to 40, somewhere in there. But I came back and I just blew up my ACL, and kind of or I guess late May. So going to Europe, you kind of leave at the end of July, so it didn't leave me with too much time with a 2 month window to kind of get healthy and go. But then I had two kind of misdiagnoses where I went in and they said, it's just a knee sprain the first time, so wait 4 to 6 weeks and you should be good to go. Went back in after 4 to 6 weeks and they said the same thing again. So now the season's starting and I still don't have a diagnosis on a knee that's going to require surgery. So eventually January came around and I finally got surgery on it. And so that sets you out for 8 months or so. So it was out till basically
Rehabbing and all that. Yeah.
almost the start of the following season before I even could really get on the ice and really get going. So with 1 year off and the potential of starting late the next year, plus we had some family issues as well, it just didn't seem right to go back overseas. There was offers out there, but nothing ever seemed worth it to kind of uproot the life again, right? When you're young, you kind of, up to 30, early 30s, you can kind of travel the world, enjoy it. But then it's a certain point where you say, I don't know if I want to go over there anymore. If there's something local or at least closer where I can see people and not be that far away, but it's a long flight over there and it's tough to make it back and forth all the time. So, yeah, it was kind of time. It was the kind of the right time. I almost had it in my head the last season in Austria that I said, this might be it anyway. So I wasn't too sure if I was going to keep playing, but blowing out your ACL definitely helps the decision.
Yeah, fair enough.
No idea. It definitely helps it for sure. As for any sort of regrets or favorite memories from playing, I mean, there's all the firsts, I think, is the big thing, and the lasts. I mean, you remember your last start in certain buildings, or I don't remember my last save. I think it might have been a goal, to be honest with you. I think I exited the way I started. I think my first professional game, I think my first pro game, the first shot went in, and then my last one, the last shot went in. So kind of in and out the same way. But yeah, there's no real regrets. I mean, you could sit back and kind of view it however you want, but I gave everything I had all the time, and whatever happens at the end of the day, it happens. I can't control any of that stuff. And was I good enough to play in the NHL long term? I don't know. That's the thing you can sit back and ask yourself all the time. I left kind of early, first off, to go to Switzerland, just to kind of get some more games in, because I knew they had Crawford and they wanted to start him a lot in the minors.
Mhm.
Whether that was a mistake or not, it could have been, but again, who knows? Who knows? I could have gone back and been injured first game in the American League and never played again. So you never know what could happen. So I really appreciated every team I played for, and they were always took really good care of me, which was amazing. Especially in Europe, when you go over there and you don't know what the heck's going on, you don't know the language, you don't know where to live, you don't know the streets, all of a sudden there's roundabouts all over the place. We don't know. It's like, okay, where's all the stop signs and stoplights? I couldn't figure it out, but they help you out. They give you a car. At the first point, I didn't even know how to drive standard, so I went over to Switzerland, and they had to get me just an automatic car, and then I went to Hungary, and I think I had this old beater 95 Lexus that had like 350,000 kilometers on it, and I looked like an undercover cop driving around town. So it was interesting to get that stuff, but then eventually I taught myself how to drive stick so I could get a normal car again. But so just appreciative of everyone that kind of helped, and it's amazing now that you get moved away from the game a bit. I think when you're playing it, you don't realize how nice people are being, and then getting away and being on the other side of it, whether it be coaching or just watching, you kind of realize how nice it was that people really made an effort to kind of make you feel at home when in a foreign country.
Oh yeah, and I like that mentality too. Where regret. They always say hindsight is 20/20. You always say what if, and that can really put people down a dark hole. And at the end, you make the most out of everything. Every decision leads to our present day right now. Again, you are in good health now. You have a goalie academy. So, things are going well. And every step you took you to that spot you're in right now. And of course, highlighted by being on the show right here.
Exactly. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, well, as you know, Heroes of the Crease is dedicated to preserving the complete history of NHL goaltending through its athletes' game-worn relics. Usually I like to have an item of the player on display behind me. This is actually the first episode where I don't actually have an item that you were using in your career. So I just have a few masks in the background. So I have to ask you, though, and obviously I spotted it in the background there, but did you ever keep anything from your playing career in your own personal collection? Or do you have any other game-worn items? And if so, what are your most prized pieces?
So I try to get a jersey from every team I played for. It was kind of tough, some of the teams, because they were, I think we talked about it yesterday, where some teams reuse them. Chicago was big on that back in the day, where they loved using the same jersey for 3,000 people, and who knows where it dates back to. But also the other interesting part is the history you can trace back, and who wore this at what point, like you mentioned yesterday as well. But it's one jersey from every team is basically what I have in my collection now. I think I have my draft jersey from Chicago as well, so I think I have two from them. But besides that, I got these pads, as I mentioned, from my old goalie partner, and then I rebuilt one of my old helmets. I guess I could show off one of the masks. For sure. This is something I actually wore. Some people was always asking why I wore a white helmet in junior, and also a white helmet in my first year pro, and it was actually the same helmet. I got it in 1998, I believe, from the OHL, or maybe we had to buy it. I don't really recall what it was, but and then the new versions of the iTech, which turned into Bauer profile helmets, came out, and they were not what I envisioned, and I didn't like the feel of them. They were kind of plasticky a little bit, so I just stuck with this thing and wore it for like 6 years. Yeah, it was crazy. There's a lot of history in there. It's got my first NHL game, first OHL game, I guess. Yeah, even first OHL game, Memorial Cup in there as well. So probably, they even have the attempted fight against Tomas Vokoun, I guess, would be in that as well. So it's got a lot of history to it. So I kind of rebuilt it, and so I kind of got rid of a bit of the smell to it, because over 6 years you're using it a lot. It kind of builds up a little bit of history, I guess we could call it. But so I rebuilt the whole thing, kind of going off of some old photos, and it's pretty amazing it survived this long, and it's still actually functional. I can wear it on the ice if I wanted to. So
still amazing you managed to use it for 6 years in your pro career there, even in the juniors. I mean, a lot of guys nowadays, we briefly talked about it there yesterday, pretty much once a month have a new mask, some of them.
Yeah.
Not to mention take a good clapper off the mask and that's it. It's a write-off if it has a crack on it. So that it was so durable for so long. That's amazing.
Well, I think the fortunate part is I didn't have a paint job on it. That thing would have been chipped right off, and it just there's nothing really ever to chip off of it. So it's kind of unique that way. I think now with the wraps coming in, you're going to see a lot more helmets being rewrapped, and because they're getting away, it seems like a lot of goalies getting away from being painted, or it's like a 50-50 split to a certain extent now. Because it's just so fast to get a wrap done. I mean, if you need what, you get traded, and all of a sudden you say, "Hey, I need a new helmet." The team says, "No, we're just going to wrap your helmet with the new team's colors." It makes a lot of sense. Saves the team, $1,500 or whatever they cost now for helmets. So, it was just neat to have it for so long. It actually was. It's probably still now the best fitting helmet I've ever had. It's the old iTech 961. And it just, I think eventually maybe molded to my head because I wore it for so long. So it's kind of custom by wearing,
right.
by just age, I guess I could say.
It also like shaped your head too while you're wearing it, so it shaped each other.
It's like a guitar that gets better with age as the wood gets older. Maybe the Kevlar started warping to my head. I don't know what happened, but it's still, it's amazing. I wore it probably 3 or 4 years ago, just kind of in an alumni game, just threw it on, and it still felt just as good as 2000 or 98, I guess 99, whenever I had it on last. So
time to go for the comeback.
Yeah, exactly.
Professional tryout.
Yeah, right. I doubt it. I guess anything else would be I don't know if you can see the sticks here. They have an old heat and stick there. That was my first. I can't really reach it. That's my first OHL shutout.
Oh wow!
The tape's getting a little bit yellow now, so I got the ticket. I think my dad would have done this, obviously, but it's got the game puck, the stick. The stick tape's cool. Obviously very yellow. The date, the ticket, everything. So the team got the score. Oops, this way. Vito and sound, and that was a pretty cool old heat and stick. It's an Olaf Kolzig stick, so maybe that's why I beat him twice, because I used this stick coming up. But then, after that, it's basically my collection would be I got a Blaine Locker stick.
Oh, there you go. The Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, from Buffalo back in the day, and then a game used Alan Bester.
Oh, there you go.
Stick as well. So the Blaine Locker is just a Sherwood, but if I can reach the Alan Bester one, yeah, here it is. So beautiful Louisville. Got the name there. Got a few. Looks like maybe he slashed the post a few times. So got a few chips right there where he's
super durable sticks. Those were too.
Yeah. And then the tape's getting even worse than my tape job over there. But yeah, so that's the stuff I kind of collected. Any favorite goalies that I would have growing up? If I see something online and it's like not ridiculously priced, where some of the stuff does get kind of crazy.
Just a little bit.
I try to go after within a certain number. Again,
who's some of them on your radar right now?
I mean, I think you mentioned this before, but a Brodeur would be pretty cool to get. You don't see them too often, and if you do, you see the price tag attached. Patrick Wall would be the same thing. Felix Potvin I liked growing up. I was, being so close to Toronto, went to Maple Leaf Gardens a lot. So watching Felix play was a lot of fun. Again, you'd never see a lot of the stuff come up from the 90s. There was so few new equipment you would get throughout a year. You might get 2 sets a year. Now it's every 2 weeks or whatever it is. They're getting new stuff and different colors and whatever, home and away equipment too. But back then it was you'd get your set, or at least what I was told, maybe they were lying to me. It was you get your set for the start of the year for exhibition, you get your mid-season, and then you get your playoff set. So you'd basically be going through 3 sets of pads a year and maybe 6 sets of gloves or 5 sets of gloves. But we didn't have the practice gloves back then. So you're practicing with your game glove, and your hands are always swollen and beaten up like crazy, and then
toughens it up though for
I know. I remember the last couple
wood at home.
The last couple years I played, I finally got a practice glove, and I said, why weren't they doing this 20 years ago? This is ridiculous. Like, my hand doesn't hurt anymore. It's crazy. So it's
one of the gear I have in the museum there is one of your former assistant coaches when you were in the OHL, Peter Sidorkowicz, have one of his pads there that he used for like 3 years. It's just stitched up, repaired all over. We used it with Ottawa, with New Jersey, with Fort Wayne Comets, with Albany. It just, the 90s and before were such a lawless wasteland when it came to gear.
Oh yeah, you get traded and they'd paint your stuff sometimes. They would take your
That's
equipment
right.
and they'd say, okay, or get a Sharpie and say, okay, we're not green, you're going to be black now. So they'd Sharpie it in. It was
Tom
crazy.
Barrasso did that when he got traded to Toronto from Carolina. Yeah, just sort of colored in the pads with blue pen where it was red before, and that was the same thing. The one behind you, a Von Velocity set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's I always thought, I don't know why they got rid of pads so quick. I used to like the broken down sort of softer pads, hence why I used a Von pad. I guess kind of the softest on the market at that point. But
Arturs Urbe liked them too.
Yeah, but it would deaden rebounds, so you could really control your rebounds in close. I know now, obviously, they're so focused on having these explosive rebounds that fly out to the corner, or out, go to the other end. Sometimes it seems like, but back then when we didn't have that technology available, it was just nice to have a puck that would hit your pad and kind of deaden itself, so you could cover it. Because I don't think the net drives were as strong back then. Although there was a lot more slashing and cross-checking, but there was a lot more times where you'd want to kind of cover it rather than play it to the corner, and that's kind of gone away from the game. It seems like now, where everything's just got to explode off your block or off your pads everywhere. So
it does make it a little more dramatic sometimes, though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just like a windmill, it gives that same effect.
I still love the windmill saves when I see those. They're classic, and it's usually when you're kind of late on a shot, it feels like, or if you're over anticipating and cheating over and you're ready to rob the guy. So still gotta love seeing them. Even the 2-pad stack windmill, I think that Dubnyk did a couple years ago. That was I think Fleury still pulls it out every once in a while too. So it's always fun to see them. They are kind of going away from the game, but it's always nice to see them in the game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, both fairly young in the era of like Bill Ranford and them, and I mean that was such a different era with the true stand-up styles.
Yeah.
So we're coming up close to the end, so we have time for a couple more questions, and then unfortunately time just flies so fast in these episodes.
For sure.
So since retiring, you became a goalie instructor, even owning your own goaltending academy to help foster the next generation of goalies. While you played in your career, you had many coaches who were former NHL goalies, including Peter Sidorkiewicz, as you had mentioned, Vladislav Tretiak, and John Van Briesbroek. Were there any particular goalie coaches whose teachings you carry forward today? And are there any whose advice is perhaps better left in the older days of goaltending?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of great goalie coaches out there now. There's tons of great goalies. There's tons of great goalies of the past, and I think you can learn something from everybody you've played with, been taught by, or played against. Even sometimes you take something from the guy on the other end, and you're like, okay, how does he do that? I want to kind of learn what he's doing. So it's tough because you kind of mold. For me, I molded my own kind of style through all the teachings, but the biggest one for me was Stefan Waite in Chicago. When he got a hold of me, which was I think during the lockout year of 04-05, kind of end of 03-04. Still, like I mentioned before, still a very raw goalie with not a lot of training, structured training in place. So it was, I'm sure it was a project for him. Being a goalie coach now, I'm sure it was a major project and a lot of head scratching and a lot of, I don't know, a lot of angry words maybe. But he was one of the most
behind the scenes. Yes.
Yeah, he's one of the calmest guys in the world. So I doubt he would have said anything too bad. But he gave me a pretty long leash and really we worked hard together to kind of figure out the style that would work at that time and with that team. And I thankfully was successful moving forward. Maybe not so much when I was with him, but kind of his teachings and seeing him in the summer, going to school in Quebec in the summer, every year, kind of before I go to camp, just set me on the right path and got me focused. This is what I need to focus on this year. Okay, here's what I can work on throughout the year, and here's what I need to work on next off season, almost. And, kind of planning forward for that. But he just simplified the game. That was the easiest thing. It seemed very complicated and fast, and then he broke it down to a structure where I could be very compact and very common there without exploding around or just sliding around too much. Limiting my movement, I guess, would be the biggest thing, especially on zone entries. And it simplified it. And I still have some of his teachings in today. Some of the stuff I had to scrap because, like everything, every 10, 15 years, this game changes very drastically. And we're probably at 2 changes since I played then. So it's gone very drastic, a different way. So some of the stuff I still do use some of the drills we were doing. I still do some of the drills with some of the younger goalies I work with, and they work great because it seems like now that young goalies, I would say probably around 12, 13, are learning stuff that I was learning second year pro. So it's gone in such a way that information is so readily available that anybody can find it at any time now. So kids are getting taught at a younger age how to play goal and how to do successfully, how you're going to have to get to pro. So, a lot of these kids know stuff. When I go to talk to them, I say, okay, that's impressive. You know that already. You're 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever it might be. And it's just they have knowledge that we didn't have, due to online resources, YouTube, whatever it might be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the goalie position has evolved so much where at the beginning it was just sort of the extra guy on the team. It's just like, yeah, just do your thing. And then when they were more respected, it was still the coach just kind of didn't know what to do with them because a lot of coaches weren't goalies. So it was just like drilled the players and the goalies just do your own thing. And then, the early goalie coaches came about. And then as we talked about, position became a lot more technical and people are coming in a lot earlier, a lot younger with a lot more of the technical knowledge, and then carries forward to more, I would say, more consistent style that looks identical in a lot of modern goalies there.
Yeah, it's amazing to see that, like you said, it was kind of the extra skater, the guy that couldn't skate as well, maybe the heavier kid or whatever it might have been. I don't know what it was, but they basically just said, go grab that oven mitt looking thing and that weird looking stick and put on those pads, and you go stand in that net and you'll be the one we're going to fire pucks at. And it's like, okay, well, that seems like kind of fun. So I remember, trying to do it when I was a kid, and I would jump up in the air before I'd try to make the save landing. So I'd kind of get airborne for a second, trying to make
go for the soccer saves.
Yeah. So it was an interesting style that didn't work very well. And I think my first 2 games ever played in net, and minor novice or whatever it's called now, was 12, 13 goals each game or something, who knows, but it wasn't too good. And then I think my dad realized that pretty quickly. He said, we better get you to a goalie school so you understand how to even stand in net and do something functionally. But
No, it's interesting. A lot of former pros I've spoken with, a lot of them didn't have the most positive things to say about their former goalie coaches, where they didn't really feel like they learned a lot. Like I know one of the former guests mentioned that Tretiak was a great goalie, but didn't really teach him anything because a lot of the stuff he was teaching was old and out of date. Someone mentioned Bernie Perrant, again, same thing, great guy, but teachings are just so antiquated. But yeah, that's the big one, like you said, is evolving and keeping track of where those changes happen in time with goaltending style. And as you said, it's happened twice since you retired, where the styles like completely changed and you had to relearn. And that's the big one. If you don't adapt, then you fall behind, and especially running a goalie school, you got to be on top of that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that Passmore was talking about Tretiak for sure, because and but he was. I mean, it was, some of the stuff was very dated. He liked work ethic, so he wanted you to work as hard as you could, and then you get a 2-minute break. It was very, very odd stuff. I remember that one of the first camps I went to where he was there, and we were doing skate as fast as you can from the goal line to the blue line and try and 2-pad stack from one blue line to the next blue line. And I was nice. Like, okay, I don't know when I'd use that, but all right. And then the other one was log rolls. We did somersaults, and then
that's definitely the old style, the Soviet style.
Yeah. So it was all that sort of stuff that you see probably in Miracle or whatever that movie was, where they're playing. But
he does all that in his book too. That Art of Goaltending he released in the early '80s. There,
I read that. I had my mom read that to me as a bedtime story. That, and I think the Grant Fuhrer had a book as well. That I used to read as well. But it was definitely different. And he would pull me aside and have little side conversations. Tretiak would, and definitely a different way of thinking. He told me that I wouldn't have enough intensity when I played, and that I need to have the intensity of 1,000 cats or I'd never make it. And I always sat back and I was like, I don't know what that means. It must have a
Good
different
analogy.
it must be a different translation or the analogy in Russian or something. But the intensity of 1,000 cats always got away from me, and whenever I wasn't playing to my best level, I would kind of think of that and chuckle, and it kind of actually relaxed me a little bit to a certain extent. So maybe that was his goal. But yeah, he was
a great expression. I have to use that all the time now.
Somebody's not exactly.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's see if there's any pending questions. No pending questions. So we're coming up to our final question of the episode. So this is one I always like to leave off every single episode with because it is an important thing. As someone who lived a dream that every young player aspires to achieve, do you have any advice for kids or for the parents of a kid who may want to become pro hockey players one day?
Yeah, I mean, coaching now, you see the other side of it with the parents getting some phone calls, some angry phone calls, whatever it might be, about their kid playing. But I think my dog's trying to pop in here now. So
special guest.
Yeah, special guest. So yeah, it's just to the parents, I guess, let your kids kind of decide how they want to go about it. It seems like now that the kids are on the ice so much, and you kind of have to kind of keep up with everybody, but you also got to remember that some of these kids don't want to do whatever you're forcing them to do. They're making the kids uncomfortable, and it's really sad to see. So to the parents, just obviously listen to your kids and see what they want, but to the kids, also let your whole family enjoy the experience, because it really is an experience for the whole family, right? It's not just the player. It's parents are going through the exact same thing as we're going through. They're going through bad games, especially as a goalie. I felt bad for my mom for sure. I'm sure she took it personally when someone would call me a piece of trash or something in the stadium, and she's sitting there like, hey, no, he's not. But there's 10,000 people or 20,000 people yelling it. But it's a whole family experience, right from minor hockey to, for me, was the OHL draft. The whole family was there. The NHL draft, the whole family was there. The games, really important games, even Team Canada, they were there. So it really is a whole family thing. So for the players come up, just don't forget that it is a family experience, and to really not forget when they're there. And even if you play a terrible game, go out and enjoy your family, because it can be really uncomfortable if somebody comes to see an 8-hour drive and you get yanked or you don't score a goal and you're grumpy. You have a right to be grumpy, but keep it in the dressing room, and enjoy your family. And I think that'll be hopefully good advice for them going through.
Very good advice, and definitely people should take heed of it. I mean, the people who've made it to the pros, they know what they're talking about for the most part. Well, we've come up to the end of episode number 7 of Interview with an NHL Hero. Once again, Adam Munro, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and to share with us your insights and some pretty interesting tales from your time in the pros and in the minors and in the juniors. It's been a great time. This hour and a half flew by, and I had to even cut questions from the list just for the sake of time. That's how much fun it was. So I want to thank you again.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate inviting me out to this, Bruce. It's been an honor. So it's hopefully I can find something eventually to send it to you. I'll keep looking.
For sure.
If something pops up, I don't know how many people are selling my stuff, but if I do find it, I'll send it your way for sure.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, it's a glaring spot on the want list of some Adam Munro stuff. And for all of our guests watching, I also want to thank you for coming by and for asking some interesting questions. I also got some really good responses in the episode here. Of course, we're always on the lookout for our next episode, so stay tuned for that. And there may be an announcement coming in the next few weeks. But until next time, my friends, have all of yourselves an excellent day. Goodbye.